America. They don't want them to join America. We used to talk about how America was the great melting pot. Everybody brings something into the country and we all mix it together and we get something that didn't exist before anywhere else, some unique blend of all these backgrounds and cultures. They don't want that. They don't want the melting pot. They want the tossed salad. They want people to remain distinct, because if they remain distinct and separate from each other in their own little enclaves, or in the case of the Muslims, in their own self-set up and self-maintained ghettos, because they don't want to mix with the outside people. And that happens in many cases. They encourage them not to learn the language. They want us to pay for their education in a different language other than English. So they don't even want them to have a common language with us. What was the Tower of Babel about? Oh, you separate people by language and they can't work together. They won't work together. It'll be the foundation of confusion and conflict. And that is what our government is engineering with these people who come in. That's why the second generation is worse than the first. They have no concept of the places that they came from, that even though their parents may not feel comfortable in this culture, they know that what they came from was worse than what they have here. But the kids don't know that. And the kids don't want to be identified as American because that's got too many connotations of, being connected to these white males and stuff. So let's come up with a separate identity. And that's when you get these La Raza judges that are coming against Trump. That's when you get this shooter in Orlando. Okay? These people come in like this judge, heavily pushing La Raza, push everything for the race. For people outside of the race, nothing. And he comes against Trump. It was about La Raza, just like it's about Islam for this guy. This guy mocked his classmates and celebrated at 9/11. He said, this is what America deserves. And then he shoots 50 people because the second generation hates us the most.
Career criminal mastermind Hillary Clinton wants your vote. So let's take a look at what is fueling her presidential campaign, because a small percentage of shallow, misinformed voters will cast their vote for Hillary based on plastic values determined by her sex, her shallow political experience, and her hollow promises rather than the criminal indulgences Hillary has left in her wake as a corporatized public servant for the hijacked U.S. federal government. Hillary's New World Order cohort, President Obama, utilized the Hegelian dialectic to simply lie out of both sides of his mouth to get elected, racking up countless broken promises, a tactic Hillary wields with abandon. Currently, the latest hellhound on Hillary's trail is the fact that 20% of Hillary's campaign is funded by none other than the royal family of Saudi Arabia. That's right. Hillary is funded by those responsible for 9/11, the country that bought its way onto the United Nations Human Rights Council, while simultaneously beheading its own citizens, bringing the 2016 death toll to 95 as of June 2nd, 2016. Saudi Arabia has a legal system based on Sharia law, with a Sharia law mole compromising a potential U.S. president in the form of the Muslim Brotherhood-linked Huma Abedin via her parents and her brothers. True to form, faux feminist Hillary wants to deflect the fact that the greatest woman-hating country on planet Earth is funding 20% of her campaign.
Good people will sit there and go to an interfaith gathering and hear women talk about how wonderful that Islam was the first to give women their rights, that Islam protects women. So listen to all these things that Islam is supposed to be good for women, and just sit there and, like baby birds, when the mother bird feeds them, they drop the worm down the mouth.
Meanwhile, ISIS is selling 6-year-olds into sex slavery and gets Saudi Arabian approval.
When you enter the world of Islam, you enter a world in which everything has two meanings and everything is upside down. And everything you think you know, it's the opposite of that. It's like Islam is permanent opposite day.
We and our allies must work hand in hand to dismantle the networks that move money and propaganda and arms and fighters around the world. We have to stem the flow of jihadists from Europe and America to Iraq, Syria, Afghanistan, and then back again. The only way to do this is by working closely with our partners, strengthening our alliances, not weakening them or walking away from them.
Trump's words will be, in fact, they already are,
a recruiting tool for ISIS to help them increase its ranks of people willing to do what we saw in Orlando. General Petraeus said recently that demonizing a religious faith and its adherents will come at a great cost, not just to our values, but to our men and women in uniform and our national security.
But Hillary knows who butters her globalist bread. Zero Hedge reports, as a reminder, it is illegal in the United States for foreign countries to try to influence the outcome of elections by funding candidates. That appears not to have stopped the Saudis, however. Saudi Arabian Prince Mohammed was quoted as saying, "Saudi Arabia always has sponsored both Republican and Democratic Party of America. And in America, current election also provide with full enthusiasm 20% of the cost of Hillary Clinton's election, even though some events in the country don't have a positive look to support the king of a woman for presidency." Forgive the bad English. The report did not remain on the website for long, although the Washington-based Institute for Gulf Affairs later republished an Arabic version of it, which quoted Prince Mohammed as having said Saudi Arabia had provided with full enthusiasm an undisclosed amount of money to Hillary Clinton. It's simple. A vote for Hillary is a vote for the continued slaughter and subjugation of American citizens under the emerging acceptance of Sharia law over the values expressed in the United States Constitution. It's really that simple. John Bound for INFOWARS.com.
It's Tuesday, June 14th, 2016. 14 days ago, Tim Kennedy, Special Forces soldier, patriot, was here warning us of imminent jihad attacks inside of the United States. And just 12 days later, his warning came true. Here's a video that we weren't going to air until the future in a film that we're producing that you're now going to get a chance to see today when Tim Kennedy issued his warning. Now, some people can say, hey, tell us something we don't know. I understand that. I know you're informed. I know you understand. We have to get this out to our friends and neighbors and community that are in the dark, that are blaming the Second Amendment for the tragic mass murder in Orlando. And Tim Kennedy's warning you to get prepared, get ready, get a firearm, learn to defend yourself, because the government isn't going to do it. The SWAT team stood down in Orlando for 3 hours. This is outrageous. Our borders are wide open. They're not even vetting the refugees. This guy's father was a jihadi, calling for the death of gays. His imam was. The FBI's hands were tied, and they weren't even allowed to go after these people. That's because of the political control that Islam has directly out of Saudi Arabia, and that Wahhabists have bought off our government, from Hillary Clinton to Barack Obama to General Petraeus.
Political correctness these days are getting people killed. Heaven forbid you actually say something that's not politically correct. Then you're a bigot. Then you're a racist. Then you're a misogynist, sexist. Talk about tolerance. Paris, France, one of the most beautiful places on the planet. I think it's like city of romance, music, culture, food, philosophy. They're tolerant for years now, a decade. They've been welcoming with open arms the refugees from the Middle East. And while their arms have been opened and letting these people in, they've been taken advantage of. Now here we are 10 years later, the tolerance that they've demonstrated, you'd think that maybe they would get some form of grace from the extremists. No, they see weakness. They're maybe misunderstanding that this kindness is weakness. And in the instance of France, it was weakness.
All right, we are just getting word now what appears to be a shooting, maybe multiple shootings in the city of Paris. Police officials there say at least 2 are dead from an explosion in a bar near Paris Stadium, and separately a shootout in a Paris restaurant.
The Islamic State has claimed responsibility for the attacks. French President Francois Hollande vowed to use all means necessary inside or outside of the country to defeat the terrorist army.
The scene on the ground across Paris appears to be chaotic, but what we are hearing from a French television network, that network, and this is unconfirmed, are reporting that 18 people are dead.
Europe might be lost because of their tolerance. Tolerance and political correctness, they go hand in hand. You know, they're two diseases. They're like a virus that is, like, once it's caught, you just want to stay with it, but slowly it's eroding and killing you. You're gonna die. That's what political correctness and tolerance is doing to our society. You know, we're trying to be nice. We don't want to offend anybody. And by doing that, we're getting weaker. Stop being and call things how you see them. You know, we have politicians right now that will say anything to get elected. They'll lie at every opportunity.
Well, have you always told the truth?
I've always tried to. Always. Always. The Supreme Court is wrong on the Second Amendment, and I am going to make that case every chance I get.
That's the thing about the truth and political correctness. They can't coexist. You either have what's true and what's right, or then you have what's socially acceptable. Those two things are exclusive. They can't live together. Believe in the truth, live in the truth, speak the truth, and for sake, just get rid of the political correctness.
We're 9 days away from Brexit, whether or not Britain will leave the European Union. Now, this is a story that is not just of interest to those in the UK. This is important to everyone in the world. Why? Because where we're at right now with these trans-Pacific, transatlantic partnerships, they're ready to consolidate these regional trade deals into a more consolidated global governance. You need to understand, as we've talked about this with Bilderberg, the EU was simply an intermediate step to a consolidated world governance. So how do we stop that? Well, we've got an election coming up in Britain in 9 days. That can stop the EU and the next step of consolidation by breaking Britain out of the European Union, by creating a smaller independent state that is not going to be controlled outside of Britain. And the way we can fight that in the United States is with the election of Donald Trump. But let's take a look at where this is all leading. And of course, underneath it all are the bankers. The New American reports global financial giants are looking to use TTIP, that's the transatlantic partnership, to harmonize U.S.-European laws to remove obstacles to future taxpayer bailouts. They say a cartel of 14 U.S. and European banking interests is working behind the scenes to tinker with the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership Agreement to remove any banking regulations. They say they claim to create a regulatory coherence. That's their goal, they say, across the United States and the European Union. Well, when you create regulatory coherence, when you have a harmonization of laws across Europe and America, what you're saying is you're creating something that is over and above national sovereignty. And that is the means by which they do it. Economic union, then a more political sovereignty. It's an intermediate step, and they're doing it regionally. They go to economic union, then they go to political control. They're doing it internationally as well. And as the New American writes, the TTIP has been designed to follow the EU's example of relentless widening and deepening, constantly eroding national sovereignty while building transnational governance that's not restrained by the checks and the balances of national constitutions. And of course, you won't have any more say in how your economy is controlled than you did in writing those agreements. Now, what's happening in Britain? 9 days out, we see polls show increasing support for exiting, for leaving. This is the Leave campaign opened up a 7-point lead over the Remain people. These are people that would stay in the European Union. And at the same time, we had the largest newspaper in the nation urge readers to vote to leave the European Union. That is the Sun, run by Rupert Murdoch. They say, according to a YouGov poll for the Times, Leave held a 46% to 39% advantage over Remain. Now, that's a big reversal because just a week ago, Leave was 1 point ahead. So how are the bankers reacting to this? Because we've had a lot of